guys tell where I am? Look around. Yep, I'm back at Wood Hollow. And I'm going to read you this story. This story is called Raising Dragons. And it was written by Jerdine Nolan. And the illustrations are by Elise Primavera. Let's take a look. Raising Dragons. Oh, wow. This is Dragon Island. Look at that. It looks like a dragon. Let's see. Whoa. Volcanoes. Raising Dragons. Those cool pictures. Not sure I'd want to go there. Pa didn't know a thing about raising dragons. He raised corn and peas and barley and wheat, and he had raised sheep and cows and pigs and chickens. He raised just about everything we needed for our little life on a farm, but he didn't know a thing about raising dragons. Ma didn't know about dragons either. She made a real nice home for us, but when it came to dragons, she didn't even know what they wanted for dessert. Now me, I knew everything about dragons, and I knew they were real. At first, Pa thought that the notion of dragons on a farm was just plain foolishness. Oh, I'm not too particular about fanciful creatures, and I don't have any time for make-believe, he told me one day. So when Pa said he didn't want to talk anymore, I knew I'd better keep my opinions to myself. I did my chores with my thoughts in my head at the one end of the barn, while Pa worked at the other end with his thoughts. Oh, do you see what's up there? Wow. I remember the day my life with the dragons began. I was out for my Sunday before supper walk, and near Miller's Cave, I came across something that looked like a big rock, but it was too round and too smooth and not hard enough to be a rock. Carefully, I rolled it into the cave and I went to fetch Pa. "What do you think it is, Pa?" I asked. "An egg, a big egg," was all he said. "Now you stay away from that thing, my daughter. No telling what'll come out of it." I couldn't tell if Pa was more scared than worried. "You just stay away, you hear me?" he said, pointing a finger. Whoa. I always minded my parents, never had a reason not to, and I tried to mind Pa now, but I could not stay away. Day after day, I'd go to Miller's Cave to wait and watch and wonder, what is coming out of that egg? One night, I couldn't sleep. I got out of my bed and I climbed out of my window and I went onto the perch that Pa had made for me up in the oak tree. But a loud noise broke the stillness of the night. Crack! It was louder than 100 firecrackers on the 4th of July. Crack! I heard it again. This time it was louder than before, and it was coming from Miller's Cave. At the first hint of dawn, when the sun was coming up, I headed towards that sound, and there in the corner of the cave where I'd left it was the egg, and pushing its way out, like I've seen so many baby chicks do, was a tiny dragon poking through the shell with its snout. It was love at first sight. "Hey there, little fella, welcome to the world," I said, all soft and low. As I stroked its nose, a sweet little purring whimper came from him. I touched skin to scale, and I knew I was his girl and he was my dragon, and I named him Hank. Hank was just a joy to have around. He was a fire-breathing dragon, and he made sure he kept his temper whenever I was near. Pa wouldn't have seen the sense or the use in having a dragon around who ate you out of house and home. Thankfully, Hank preferred fish and frogs and eels and insects to beef, lamb, chicken, and pork. And he did have a healthy appetite. Ma never wanted to know about Hank. Whenever I wanted to talk about him, she'd cover her ears and just sing. She said that having a dragon around had to be worse than having a field full of critters. But it wasn't. Ma and Pa taught me about caring for living creatures. They taught me that from the day I was born. They taught me about raising lots of things, but they never imagined that I would someday be caring for a critter that most folks don't even believe exists. It did take a little time, but whether they liked it or not, Hank was part of the family. Now, he was an awesome thing, growing to be as big as the barn from tail to snout. Hank was very clumsy when his wings came in, but once he learned how to use them, we would go flying together, mostly at night. Up until then, I had been afraid of the dark. The shadows and the muffled noises and the complete quiet stillness always seemed to be waiting and watching me. I had seen our farm from up in my tree porch, but Hank showed me my world from way up on high, the way a cloud or a bird or a star might be seeing it. Up there I saw things for what they were, and it was just grand. Pa was the first one to notice what he called the strangeness happening around our farm. One morning, with Samson, our mule, hitched for work, Pa set out to plow the field, but all the work had already been done. The ground was turned over and the seeds had been sown, and Pa was plumb flabbergasted. What do you think did it? Hank and I tended to the crops too. We pulled weeds and we kept the varmints away. And Hank even got me to school before the first bell rang. Even after all the good he'd done, Ma still didn't want to be any part of Hank. But when a hot spell hit and her tomatoes began drying out, it was Hank who hovered above them, fanning away the heat. He saved just about every one of them. Now, Ma didn't admit it, but she felt beholden to Hank, and she began fixing fancy gourmet meals just for him, like eel pot pies and frog leg pudding and fish and insect stew, things that Hank just loved. Day after day, Hank was getting bigger and bigger, and Ma was uneasy about Hank's fire-breathing breath. Pa paced around with worry about all the corn that Hank and I planted. There was corn growing everywhere, and Ma cooked as much of it as she could. There was just too much. Just when it seemed like the corn would swallow up our whole farm, Hank grabbed Pa's shovel, and he dug a wide trench all around the cornfield. And then he blew on it with his hot breath. "What in tarnation?" Pa screamed, and Ma ran out of the house carrying a bucket of water. But it was too late. The whole field was ablaze. We couldn't believe our eyes and our ears when we heard pop, 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 pop. Hank was making popcorn. It took an entire week to salt and bag it, but we sold it all at a profit. It was the first dragon popped popcorn that anybody had ever seen or tasted. And oh, it was real good too. I want some of that. When Ma harvested her tomatoes, Nancy Adkins bought some. She claimed they must have medicinal value. Maybe they could heal her. She said that they cured her gout And pretty soon, people all over wanted dragon-grown food like they wanted medicine or magic cures. But there was nothing medicinal or magic about it. It was just Hank. The crowds and attention decided his fate, and one evening Ma and I were sitting in front of our pot-bellied stove, and she was shelling peas while I read Murdoch's Adventure Atlas of the Unknown and Known World. It was a book I'd gotten from the library that morning, and in an instant, I realized what I needed to do. Come morning, Hank and I set out for the dragon-shaped landmass floating in the middle of the ocean. Oh, is that an island? There were dragons everywhere. They put us up in their best hotel, invited us to eat at their best restaurants, and Hank felt right at home. When I saw Hank playing run and fly and chase, I knew he'd found the perfect place to be. All in all, it was a great vacation. But at the end, it got really hard. I had to say farewell to Hank, at least for now. Normally, I don't get all mushy at departings, but when Hank turned to me and called me his cupcake, I boo-hooed a heap. Just as I was about to board my plane, Hank stood there in the runway trying to hide a wheelbarrow behind his back. His toothy grin lit up that cloudy day. That wheelbarrow was full of... Oh, is it rocks? Ma squealed in puzzlement. "'Tain't rocks, Mother. They're eggs. They're dragon eggs," I exclaimed. Pa beamed right proud. Each egg looked a little different from the rest. One glowed, one glistened, another one flickered, and another one even sparkled. I stood there admiring the lot of them. Looking at those eggs, I thought about Hank. For now, he was out there somewhere in the world. I knew I'd see him again. Wondering when was the only thing fixed in my mind. But in the meantime, I knew what I had to do. The same way Pa knew that farming was in his blood, I knew that raising dragons was in mine. There are some things you just know.